Thank you and good afternoon. I hope that you've all had an enjoyable afternoon so far. And I'd like to start off by saying it seems like a lot of what I have to say has already been said. So I might go a little bit fast, especially at the beginning. Liz had a lot of wonderful things to say about creativity and how it comes about. And it mirrors a lot of what I have to say, maybe in different words, but I think that the intents are very much the same. So I'll start off by saying creativity is valuable, yada, yada, yada. We know that. I'm not here to convince you of that. So we'll move on to the next part of that, which is my agenda. Briefly, I'll talk about theory and what that means in terms of creativity in work groups, which is the area in which I study, but very quickly. And then we'll talk about changing perspectives as a way of viewing that creativity. But most importantly, I'd like to focus on describing these ideas as they've been implemented in a program at the University of South Carolina. Okay. So in my area, there's a lot of research on creativity because we like it. We like it in business. And there's been a lot of studies that have shown, well, you can foster play, increase mindfulness, foster positive moods. Those are all great things that that cause creativity. However, on the flip side of that, we see that some of those opposites, fostering sustained work, or increasing mindlessness, or fostering negative moods, also cause creativity. So we tend to think of things through a single lens, which doesn't allow us to really understand how it works. But what is creativity? How do we decide whether creativity has happened? And here is where I think a lot of what I have to say ties in with what Liz was saying earlier. We can differentiate between craft and creativity. Okay? So craft, or the domain in which you operate, okay? We know what's useful. As an educator, we know what works. As a performer, we know what works. That's your domain, your craft. Well, we can think of, people often use novel as a way of describing creativity. But novel means something new or hasn't been done before. But we don't know if it's really novel unless you apply it in a domain, right? If you're an expert in your domain and something new comes along, you know it's new. But just new in and of itself doesn't make much sense. So the way that I view creativity, it's about adding novelty to craft. And again, I think Liz spoke to that very eloquently in a lot of the stories that she shared. So we often think that novelty and usefulness are negatively correlated. In this case, it's very useful, right? Maybe not novel, or somewhat novel, but we tend to not think of them the same. In this case, it may be very novel, maybe not very useful. But there's lots of ways in which they're interdependent. Here we have 3 different things that you can sit on, and they all have some creative or novel elements to it. So you can think of something as useful novelty. Okay, creativity as useful novelty. In this case, here's a bike. You can pack it all up and then stow it under your bed when you're all done. Right? But we only know that it's creative because we know what a bike should look like. Otherwise, we just look at it and go, what is that? I don't quite get it. So looking at a product, we can say, wow, that was creative. Right? We can see the outcome and we know that. But we still don't necessarily know. How do we get there? What are the processes that underlie creativity? So let's think about some processes, okay? Something that's necessary and sufficient. Again, there's lots of different ways. There's lots of different literature that talks about making distinctions, flexibility, broad categorizations. Those are all processes for developing creative outcomes. But one thing we know is that these types of thinking also create outcomes that aren't so creative. So again, we're kind of stuck. But I think it starts with perspective. What do you see? Do you see a duck? Or do you see a rabbit? Both? Neither? Maybe you see something else. I don't know. But whatever you see, that's kind of where you start, right? You start with something. You perceive a situation, and you use it as your template. Okay, so we're mainly educators in here. So you're told you're going to deliver a class. you say, okay, I have to create a syllabus and create all these things that I'm going to do within that confines of a syllabus in the semester or whatever it is that you're teaching in. Great. You teach that semester and you realize some things didn't quite work, right? You wanted to add stuff. So you go and talk to others, you look at other syllabi, you recognize the gap between where you want to be and where you are, you add to it, and you revise it and you teach it again. But sometimes we need to change it completely. So you've taught this class again and you realize it's not about teaching knowledge. It's not about teaching something that you hope that students to walk away with. You want them to experience something. You really want them to internalize it. So that may mean you need to change it completely. You need to offer them an experience, not a class. Okay, so that's just an example of how we start with something that we perceive, we use it, we add to it, we change it. So to summarize, a changing perspective for creativity suggests an iterative process. Okay, use something, add to it, and change it. This means we need to know our craft or our domain. Okay, we need to know novelty when we can be willing to change the perception of things so that we add to it, and then be willing to accept that. So in other words, creativity is more than just a moment. It's a process of changing perspectives on situations, allowing actors to generate useful new kinds of knowledge and situations, and allows us to bring in lots of partners and lots of different people as well. And that's where I'm going to go next, because I'm going to talk about an innovative program that David Cutler, he is an associate professor at the School of Music. He wears lots of other hats, as shown there, but I'm really going to talk about that last one, the workshop director of the Savvy Musician in Action. Okay. What is it? It's an intensive experiential laboratory designed to help participants generate more income and impact. Okay, that's kind of the mission statement of this particular program. So participants pitch arts-based business ideas, vote on favorites, form teams, design a venture from the ground up, and compete for awards. So the idea is, let's take art students, whether they be musicians, visual arts, dancers, performers, and bring them in and give them some tools so that they can actually make a viable living and do interesting things in their profession. In 2015, 60 participants came from around the country. And what did they do? Well, for 5 very, very long and intensive days, they examined innovation strategies, business models, competitive research, finance, marketing. Sounds exciting, right? But all those really important things that they need to do. But they did it via dance, via music, via experiential exercises, as opposed to just sitting in a classroom taking notes and getting some knowledge. Who worked with the participants? Oh, lots of people from all around the country. But we had a lot of local people that participated, from our mayor who showed up. We had people from the business school. We had people from the arts community. We had people from small businesses. We had restaurants. We had museums. Everybody coming in to participate, to provide these participants with the knowledge, or to think a little bit differently. Here's an example of Greg Sandow. He's an arts journal blogger, and he was actually talking about the Apple Watch. Okay, what about the Apple Watch? Well, it's really interesting. All the things that they've done with respect to the Apple Watch and how that might inform how you think about a business idea. So he wasn't just giving you, bullet points to write down in your notes. He was trying to get participants to think about this by using a very good and salient example. These are business plans. Right? Usually when you think of a business plan, you think of a big, thick book with lots of financials in it. These are the business plan for these students. Okay? They had marketing ideas. Sometimes when they presented it, there was music or dance or some visual art, something that reflected the idea that they were actually presenting on. Okay, so how the changing perspectives model fits here. Remember earlier I talked about using, adding, and changing. To use something, okay? So David came in and said, I want to provide a program that will help arts participants generate income and impact. And he said, you know, there's lots of entrepreneurship models out there, right? You bring in groups and you give them tools that an entrepreneur might need. So he started off with that, building off of traditional entrepreneurial workshop programs, designed activities, outcomes, judges, awards, okay? In the same way that it's been done before. After that first year and getting feedback, he thought, that was really cool, went so well. Let's add to it, because now we know that we can get restaurants involved that serve Southern food, local restaurants that serve Southern food in Colombia, get people who've come from outside of that to experience that. Museums. Okay, the participants this year went to our state museum and experienced a 4D theater experience. Businesses, lots of business people come in. The government, I said our mayor came in and conducted a workshop with them. Also creating a broader experience for the participants. They didn't just stay in hotels. Many of them stayed with local families. Not families who were involved with these programs, but had heard about it through a friend of a friend and said, you know, we have space, that sounds really cool. Let's host a participant. So they got to experience Colombia, South Carolina in a whole different way. In fact, one of the final parties for this group was hosted at a private citizen's house. Once again, he had heard about it and said, what a cool idea. Let me host the party, I want to be involved. So for next year, we're going to have more of that. Maybe have all of the participants stay with families. I think now when we talk about this program, it's not just about the participants and what we're giving to them, right? It's showcasing Columbia, it's showcasing USC, it's showcasing the School of Music, it's showcasing our really incredible, vibrant arts community. And so it's also creating a community that cares about artists. This is a picture of the second place winner this year. The first place picture didn't look that exciting, so I thought I'd put this one up there. This is Cree.art, but it involves the visual arts, dance, musicians, actors, brings them all together to present an experience that hits you on all different senses. Last year's first place winner is the Fourth Wall. If you ever have a chance to see them, they're touring right now. They're really quite impressive. They've been trained in music, dance, and performance, and they involve the audience in a very engaging, interesting way, so it makes it fun and interactive. They try to do 20 short pieces in an hour, and the audience gets to vote on that. So you have to be on your toes and engaged for them to actually succeed in their plan. So when David talks about this, he says, it's like Shark Tank for the arts, an exemplar of a creative partnership. I said, it's great that you call it a Shark Tank for the arts, but to me that seems like I know the Shark Tank model and I apply it to the arts. And it's more than that now. It's grown from more than just using a perspective that we had and applying something. I think a program that this was initiated to cultivate artists who care about the community and economic impact is now really a program that's about creating a community that cares about the artists. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I'll take them now.